Hi, this is my review of Pathfinder RPG Advanced Race Guide. The Advanced Race Guide is probably, maybe it's the best supplement that has come out for Pathfinder. It has a lot of good content. It's like they put their all into making this book. There are so many good things. It really feels like they covered almost everything about the topic. It has a few negative points, but the good outweighs the bad by far. Well, let's get started. Let's talk about the quality of the book. Sadly, the quality of this book is the same as the other Pathfinder books. It's not very good. Just about 2 weeks after I got this book, look what happened. You can see the cardboard of the cover there got separated. Yeah, so it's not very good in the quality department. And I had books that I've used for 10 or 15 years, and they're still pretty good condition. Sadly, this book is really not built to last. I recommend getting the PDF instead. And well, it has a lot of good illustrations. I'm going to be showing you what I consider to be the best illustrations of the book. And it has good organization. It has very little. I think there is some errata. They haven't released an official errata sheet yet, but I think there were some things that didn't make too much sense at first. So, or at least to me, it felt like something was missing. But that's just very few in comparison to all the information in the rest of the book. Well, let's talk about the contents of the book. Before all that, there's still that flavor text or fiction at the beginning of each chapter. However, there is something that I've increasingly began to dislike about this fiction. I don't know, these fiction bits. It's that there's really not much character consistency between the Pathfinder poster characters. There is, for example, Valeros, the fighter, is very well defined in my opinion. He's kind of like this scoundrel type character, like almost kind of like Han Solo. But there are other characters like the rogue or the sorcerer. I forget their names. I think it was Mariciel and Sioni, and they feel like different characters, or like with different personalities throughout the different books. It really makes no sense, and sometimes they seem too dumb or too stupid sometimes. So, for example, you have the sorceress Sioni fighting with this elemental. I think it's an Efriti. You can see it's like a fire being. He's fighting against it, and in that little flavor text they describe that Sioni is using fire spells against the Efriti that is basically made out of fire, or at least it's kind of like a fire resistant race. So that sounds just really stupid. Why would a sorcerer attack something made out of fire with fire? It's just really nonsensical. I understand if they use some kind of ice or water based attack, but fire, come on. Well, now let's get to the contents of the book. There are so many. It's basically divided in 4 chapters. And the first 3 chapters have to do with races. In chapter 1, you get information for all the different core races. And in chapter 2, you get information for featured races, that is, races that you can only find in this book. And then chapter 3 deals with uncommon races. Again, those are races that come in with this book. I think there are some that came in other bestiaries, but that's basically it. And in chapter 4, you get the race builder, which is pretty cool, and I'll get to that in a moment. However, I've noticed that the amount of content between chapters started to decrease as you get into the book. So, for example, with chapter 1, you get a lot of options for all the different races, but with chapter 2, you get a little bit less options, and in chapter 3, you get very little options. So it's a bit disappointing that it decreases like that. But well, with each race, you get a general description, of course, telling you what that race is all about, and then you get the racial traits. You know, those abilities like infravision or hatred against a specific enemy race, or maybe you have some kind of special training or resistance against some type of spell. So those are racial traits. And then you get alternate racial rules, which include alternate racial traits. That is traits that you can swap if you want your character to be I don't know, customized for a specific situation. So for example, maybe you have your halfling, but you don't like it that the halfling has the racial trait sure-footed. So you can replace the sure-footed trait with shiftless, which is halflings have a reputation for larceny and guile, and sometimes it's well deserved. Halflings with this racial trait gain a +2 racial bonus on bluff and sleight of hand checks, and sleight of hand is always a class skill for them. So that's a way you can customize your character. So as you can probably guess, this book will give both power gamers and role players, and I mean role players in the sense that those that aren't too interested in tweaking their characters and modifying them to get the best advantage when it comes to the rules or the mechanics. Both types of players will get a lot of hours trying to create their ideal character. And so you also get racial subtypes, and racial subtypes are kind of like trait kits. That is, they have 2 or 3 traits that replace some other traits, and that's pretty cool when you have a specific character race in mind. So for example, the gnomes. Maybe you're not satisfied with a normal gnome, you want a lava gnome. And the lava gnome says, fascinated by the power of magma and living in vast caverns beneath active volcanoes, lava gnomes are considered hot-tempered and dangerously unstable even by other gnomes. Lava gnomes have the dark vision and pyromaniac alternate racial traits. So that way you can customize each race, and that's pretty cool. You also get favorite class options. That is, if your character sticks to a specific path or class, you will get, instead of getting +1 skill point or +1 hit point, you may get a small advantage. So for example, let's take the dwarf. If your dwarf takes a paladin as a favorite class, you add a +1 bonus on concentration checks when casting paladin spells. And those are the little favorite class bonuses you will get. Now, there are some racial archetypes as well, and I think everyone who plays Pathfinder really loves archetypes because they're very focused without the need for multiple prestige classes. And you also get new racial rules when it comes to equipment, feats, magic items, and spells. Now I'm going to talk just a little bit about each race in this book because there are just too many races. I'll try to cover as many of them as I can because there are a lot. So well, first we have the dwarves, and the dwarves get some interesting racial subtypes. They get Deep Delver, Elder Dwarf, Exiled Dwarf, and Mountain Dwarf. And as I told you, they have different traits. So for example, the Mountain Dwarf are also trained to defend their homes and may take the Sky Sentinel and Xenophobic traits instead. So each racial subtype allows you to further customize your character, both in theme and in the rules that you can use or the abilities that you can use. And the dwarf has some pretty awesome archetypes. So for example, you have the Faux Hammer, which is basically a hammer specialist. You can create some small earthquakes with it, and like small tremors. There's nothing too exaggerated, but just you can slam the ground and all the enemies around you may fall down if they fail their balance check. And you also get the Stone Lord, which is pretty cool. It's a paladin that can turn his body to stone to get a better defense, and you also get like a stone servant or companion that gets stronger as you level up. And with the elves, you also get some pretty cool things. The racial subtypes are Arctic Elf, Dusk Elf, Savage Elf, and Towered Elf. And I could read to you a few of the racial traits, but there are just so many. Just the elf alone has arcane focus, dark vision, desert runner, dream speaker, elemental resistance, envoy, eternal grudge, fleet-footed, etc. You have a lot of traits. There's a lot of material for you to customize your elf. You get your ideal version of the elf, and you get some pretty cool archetypes for the elf. You have the spell dancer, which is basically like a sword and sorcery elf. It's a magus archetype. You also get the tree singer, which is a druid archetype, and that's pretty cool. It's basically an elf with a plant companion instead of an animal companion. And as you can see, the illustrations are pretty good. Oh, I forgot to mention some of the equipment you get. So for example, you have some dwarven magic items such as elixir of darksight or rod of dwarven might, or you have some dwarven spells such as iron beard, groundswell. And as I was telling you, each race has also has some different feats. So the dwarf gets clip through, dented helm, giant killer, orc hooer, just a lot of them. Now the gnomes get the dread gnomes, gear gnomes, lava gnomes, and traveler gnomes subtypes. And when it comes to the archetypes, you get the experimental gunsmith, which is kind of like a mad scientist that creates guns. And you also have the saboteur, which is basically like a very sneaky alchemist. It's kind of like, and with enhanced bomb capabilities, kind of like a terrorist gnome. Here's an image of the experimental gunsmith, I think. Now, when it comes to no magic items, you get some like amazing tools of manufacture, boots of escape, phantasmal gem. You also get some new known spells such as death from below, minor phantom object, recharge innate magic, and there's also a lot of new equipment. As I was telling you, there's just so many things here. For example, the dwarves have the let me see if I can find you a few of them. Oh yeah, you have the dwarven boulder helmet, or the dwarven long axe, the dwarven long hammer, and the elves have the arcane family workbook, portable artificer's lab, compact spell book. And the gnomes, they have the Dilettante's outfit, the moon rod, obsession log, sheriff's whistle. A lot of content here. And then we have the half elves, and I'm pretty satisfied with all the things that they added for the half elves. Sometimes they feel a bit, half-baked because they're not entirely elves or humans, but they get a lot of love in this book. So for example, you get some pretty cool archetypes such as the bramble brewer, which is basically, it's an alchemist that throws plant-based bombs, as you can see here. And you also get the wild caller, which is basically a summoner that specializes in calling eidolons that have a nature theme to them, and you also get to summon a lot of nature allies. And then you have the half orcs. The half orcs also get some pretty cool archetypes. You have the blood god disciple, which is basically a summoner that can summon some pretty nightmarish eidolons that have to do with the orcish deities such as Groomish or what have you according to your setting. And you also have the Redeemer, which is basically a paladin archetype that specializes in knocking out opponents and just trying to solve things in a very peaceful manner. Let's see. With the halflings, you also have some pretty cool archetypes. You have the Community Guardian, or it's an Oracle archetype. It feels kind of like the shaman of the halflings. And you also have the Order of the Paw, a Cavalier archetype, and this is pretty cool because it's basically a knight halfling that rides dogs or wolves, and it will be pretty cool to see like an army of wolf riding halflings against, I don't know, maybe warg riding orcs or goblins. And humans get some archetypes. I'm not that satisfied with them because they seem like a bit, I don't know, like they have appeared in other books. You get the Buccaneer, which is basically a gunslinger archetype, and well, this one's pretty cool. This is the Imperious Bloodline. It's a sorcerer archetype, and you have the Blood of Kings within you, and you get a lot of things to inspire your party members. So it feels like they combine sorcerer and bard. Let's see now. Here's a pretty cool part. This is chapter 2, the featured races, and it starts out pretty strong. But however, as I was telling you here, you feel like they have less options. You get less favorite class options. You get no racial subtypes. But well, with the Asimar, I'm really not satisfied with the archetypes. Here's a cool Asimar picture. It's probably he probably has the blood of a nature deity of some sort. But the Asimar archetypes are basically a purifier and an oracle archetype that has to do with fighting against corrupting fiends or extraplanar beings that possess people. And you have the Tranquil Guardian, that's a paladin archetype, again, very diplomatic and looking for a peaceful solution to everything. I think they could have gone a bit more chaotic or violent, because we already know that the Asimar are good guys most of the time. So they should have added something a bit more, I don't know, more violent. You do get some pretty cool stuff. So for example, you have feats that allow you to grow wings and use them to fly, and the wings could be metallic and could serve as weapons. You also get the Catfolk. I would have preferred if they had like more variety to them, like Tiger Folk or Lion Folk, because Catfolk they don't seem that I don't know, that cool in my opinion. And you get some burglar or some rogue and monk archetypes for them. Now this class at first looks pretty cool. Have you ever watched Vampire Hunter D? Are you familiar with the books or the movies? Well, if you wanted to play a half vampire, half human, here's the Vampire. However, it seems to be cooler than it actually is. It seems quite fragile, in my opinion, to what it should have been like. I know they didn't want to go full vampire, but for example, you can drink blood to empower yourself, but you need to grapple with the opponent and take a bite, and that means you should put a lot of points in strength and maybe take some feats to allow you to be better at grappling. Otherwise you won't be able to drink your enemy's blood. And they also feel too, if you played Vampire the Masquerade, they feel too Venturi. That is, they are very specific in what type of blood they can drink. You need to choose a specific humanoid type so you can drink that blood, and the creature needs to be alive unless you take some feats that allows you to drink blood from the enemy. So it's very, very specific. So if you want to play like, oh yeah, I'm going to create a character just like Vampire Hunter D, you're going to be a bit disappointed. You also get Drow. Everybody's familiar with Drow. I'm surprised that they didn't include a spider-based archetype or something that has to do with spiders. Basically, a cleric that has the archetype is demonic apostle, a cleric that has to do with summoning and communicating with demon lords, and cavern sniper, which it's a fighter archetype. You also have fetchlings, which remind me a lot of the I think they were called the shades from the Forgotten Realms. Those that live above the Anarok Desert, because they are kind of like humanoids empowered with the power of the darkness of the negative plane. You also have goblins, hobgoblins, orcs. Here they are, the Ifrits, the fire beings that I was talking about. You get a bunch of elemental type races. You also have kobolds, and those are the draconic versions. As you know, sometimes kobolds are treated like dog-like creatures, but here they're kind of like draconic. You have the Oriats, which are basically like earth elemental type folk. You have the rat folk. If you want to create like a Skaven type character, here it is. Let's see what else. You have the sylphs, air elementals, the tengus, which are basically like crow-like humanoids. This version is pretty cool. It's just pretty staggering the amount of content this book has. I'm really just trying to show you a very small part of it, and I'm still taking a lot of time. You have tieflings, and this is what I'm talking about. Here you get some archetype that let's see if I can find it. Well, there is no archetype that has to do with what I was telling you, that with the Aasimar that they should have included some archetype that had to do with I don't know, more violence or chaos. And here you have an illustration of a tiefling with probably like a cleric tiefling that seems very, I don't know, like a contradiction to the tiefling's nature, because as you well know, the tieflings are half demon, half human. And here you have this character that seems kind of like a good cleric of the tieflings. You get the Undines, which are water-based, and then you have the uncommon races. And the uncommon races, these get even less options to customize them. However, they're still pretty interesting. You have the changelings. You also get the Dwergar. You also have the Gillmen, which remind me of the scum creatures that I think they serve the Diabolets. I can't remember really well. You also have the Gripplis, which are basically like frog people. You have Kitsune, which are fox people. The Merfolk, the Nagaji, the Samsarans. The Samsarans are pretty cool. They basically reincarnate every time they die. They are reborn. You have the Strix, which are kind of like harpies, Sulis that seem a bit like genies. The Sbirfnevlin, the deep gnomes. The Banaras are kind of like monkey people. The Vishkanyas, which are really creepy. They have like poisonous saliva, as you can see here. The Voyangs, they look pretty exotic, like from the Far East. Let's see, and then you have the Race Builder, and the Race Builder is just a very excellent chapter, because you have like a point system to create your own races, and using this point system tells you how strong that race is according to the different traits and racial powers and abilities that you have used to build that race. And they even include a lot of examples, like maybe your character wanted to play as a centaur, where here it is. Your player wanted to play as a centaur, or maybe a drider. You can play as a drider, and you get the point cost for those different races that you either create or that are pre-made, like these ones. So for example, the centaur is worth 28 points, and the drider is worth 35 points, and you have to be aware of these points so that your game doesn't become too unbalanced. And you get a lot of different abilities: hypnotic gaze, immortal spark, lightbringer, magical linguist, pyromaniac, seducer, shadow magic, skill bonus, stubborn, greed, eternal hope, desert runner, advanced constitution, advanced charisma. You can have wings, you can have horns, fangs. You can create any sort of race that you want, no matter the size. Look, here's a wyvern from the bestiary, from the Paizo bestiary item. However, there will be some abilities that you will not find here. Maybe you will think of something really original, and you won't be able to find something here that gives you the point cost for that power and ability. But that's okay. You can look for a similar ability and create a point value based on that. It's all very complete, just pretty amazing, and you have information on different height and weight of your races, if they are horror races or uncommon. Just a very complete book with an index that's very useful because it's pretty big. Well, it's not exactly a big book, but it has a lot of information even so. Well, let me tell you what I think about this book. This is probably the best Pathfinder supplement there is. It's going to allow you to create any kind of race that you want, to play any kind of character that you want. However, there are some negative things. Well, when it comes to the structure of the book, I think they could have added more traits when it comes to the other races, to the other non-core races. The featured racers could have used more the racial subtypes, and the uncommon races could have used more, I don't know, archetypes and equipment and feats. But I understand why they had to cut some content, because there's just a lot of things here. It would have been would have ended up being some sort of like encyclopedia if they included just too many things for each race. However, there comes some difficulty when you use or integrate these races to your campaign. So, for example, maybe you have players that want to play as core races. Your player wants to be, this player wants to be an elf, this one wants to be a dwarf, but then a player says, "Oh, I want to be an ogre," and an ogre is considerably more powerful than all of them. They are worth like 10 points, and the ogre is worth around, let's see, I saw it's worth 23 points, so that's going to be a bit unbalanced. And you have two ways to do this, at least in my experience. The first way, which is the most disappointing and boring way in my opinion, is when you use level adjustments. That is, sure, you can play as an ogre, but you have your first level character counts as a level higher character. That is, it counts like a level 2 character. And that's a bit disappointing because, for example, maybe your campaign is going to take your characters all the way up to level 20, and that ogre player will never get the fighter ability that the fighter gets at level 20, or ranger, or whatever class that player decided to play as. So, and the other way that I think it's better, but you really need an experienced game master to balance things out, is giving the other races, the other weaker races, a small advantage. So, for example, you could allow this player to play as an ogre, but you probably should give an extra feat to the other players and maybe full hit points, so that they don't feel like they're falling behind, and that way you can achieve a more balance and give more dangerous encounters that would otherwise prove to be just too much for the core races. But you should definitely get this book. It packs a lot of content. It has a lot of information and elements to customize everything about your character when it comes to the character race. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know, and see you later.